Hello. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Almost noon, and thanks for coming this beautiful, beautiful Southern California hot day. We can use water in the ocean, I think would be appropriate. And thank you, Mayor Garcetti, for actually announcing a major drought in Los Angeles. And so today we will be listening to what we can do, as you all know, to help the situation, this crisis that we're in. I'm Cara Robin, president of WestLADemClub. I think most of you know me. Before we start this amazing program, I just wanted to thank those of you who have responded to our holiday party poll, because we're trying to figure out what to do. I have actually, at the request of several people, added another question is, would you just rather postpone it until 2022? Because people have actually, as I said, written me privately saying there was no place for me to put this answer. So that is now part of the poll. If you want to go to your email and redo your answer if you have one. Also, you know, elections are crazy. We're having these major elections coming up in 2022. We're going to work our best to keep the House, keep the Senate, just keep our country on track. You know, we're really in such dire straits now with the opposition. It's really scary. We do have a lot of work to do, as you all know. But aside from national elections, we also have local elections. And we have a lot of things coming up. It's our mayoral election with everybody, you know, all the city candidates, the county board of supervisors, the assessor, the county assessor, all city council races, board races, school races, and to participate, to have a vote as a club member, because we will be doing forums. We're going to do candidate forums. I think we're going to actually split it up this time, our annual meeting in February as well as March, to be able to give people really in-depth interviews with us. So to be part of this, to vote, you must be a member. Those of you who are not members of the club, you have to join 45 days before our election meetings, our endorsement meetings. So that's just to let you know. If someone can put the link in the chat to our Act Blue page if you want to join. And you also should renew. If you're a member, you should renew as soon as you can, because it's not, if we don't do it in person, it's hard to renew at the meeting because we do it by a poll. You know, we send out the emails, so you can't renew at the last minute. Okay, so that's about it. That's all I really want to say is welcome, and I'm sure you'll enjoy today. It's going to be a wonderful day. I want to bring you now Molly Baszler, who is the chair of our state and national and our environmental guru here for WestLADemClub, and really for most of these clubs on the West Side. She started our Green Dream campaign, getting clubs to sign a pledge not to use plastic bottles and to really be much more aware. And she's going to open it. Molly, as you may know, may or may not, is also a candidate for, and will be part of our candidate forum, you know, for City Council District 5, Paul Corrett's current seat. So good for you, Molly, for running, and good luck. It's yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for our guests, our panelists, for coming on board to educate, inspire, and, you know, inspire people to get into action to conserve water. As Cara mentioned, the mayor has called a state of an emergency in regard to our water. We are in a mega drought, and it's very important that we conserve so we don't run out. And this beautiful weather is also part of the climate crisis. So we have to be very aware. So thank you for being here, for learning more, because the more aware we are, the more actions we can take. So I'm just going to start off by reading a very short paragraph from Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson. And she was considered one of the first environmentalists. And this was actually written in 1962. It's chapter 4, surface waters and underground seas. But it pertains for today just perfectly. because we don't get new water. You know, the water has been here forever. It just keeps getting recycled. So we've really got to preserve it and conserve it. Silent Spring, Rachel Carson. Of all our natural resources, water has become the most precious. By far, the greatest part of the Earth's surface is covered by its enveloping seas. Yet in the midst of this plenty, we are in want. By a strange paradox, most of the Earth's abundance is not usable for agriculture, industry, or human consumption because of its heavy load of sea salts. And so most of the world's population is either experiencing or is threatened with critical shortages. In an age when women has forgotten his or her origins and is blind even to his or her most essential needs for survival, water, along with other resources, has become the victim of his or her indifference. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Molly. These powerful words. So I'd now like to just bring on Ingrid, who will introduce our next little treat here for us. Wait, you're muted. You're muted, Ingrid. Ingrid, unmute yourself.
Got it. Yay. Hi, everyone. So glad you're all here. And I'm so happy to introduce Benny, Benedict Brydern, an award-winning violinist. He is not only a friend of mine, he has become a friend of the club. And he's always happy to do something beautiful for us. In this case, he's going to play some of Handel's water music. Enjoy.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you, Benny, for being part of our community. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of our wonderful experts here, Andrea Leon Grossman, who is the Climate Action Director of Azul. And Azul is a grassroots organization that works mainly with the Latinx community to conserve marine resources. And one of the things they did that is really dear to us, because we had some connection with the legislation that helped this, is that they did some groundbreaking conservation policy victories, including the shark fin ban and the first statewide ban of single-use plastic bags in the country. And Andrea will give us a little background and give us a slideshow to really set the stage for today. So Andrea?
Hi, buenos dias. My name is Andrea Leon Grossman. I am with Azul. I'm a Climate Action Director. And today I want to talk about water, ways we can source water sustainably versus another really horrible thing that is coming up more and more if you look at chat online, which is desalination, and it's really not the way that we should be going. So I want to just kind of set this up that way, and also why, if we don't invest in the real climate resilient solutions, we can actually end up paying with even money for housing, which is terrible. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, if I'm allowed to.
Yes, yes, you're. I believe you're made a co-chair. So
disable. Let's see.
You should be able to. You know, I don't know why you can't. I'm so sorry. Here, let me. I'll try this again. I'll make you co-host again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Got it.
Good. Okay, great.
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much for inviting me today. And today I'm going to talk about this one. This is the most recent plan that they want to build, desalination plants. So first, I'm going to start by talking about the human right to water. Since 2012, we got a law in California saying that we have the right to clean, safe, and affordable drinking water. But by 2019, Governor Newsom realized that that was not really doing what it was intended to do, to make all those issues a priority in terms of water being a human right. So we got another bill to increase funding to achieve this goal. Even with this, it's worth noting that there's still over 1 million Californians without access to clean, safe, and affordable drinking water. It's also worth mentioning that we do have a law that is calling for consumption use of 50 gallons per person per day. And I'm just putting this slide here for you to see how it compares to other countries and other places. So we really need to be supporting this bill that is coming back next year for Laura Friedman, because the efficiency needs to be codified. So please do support Assembly Member Friedman on this venture so that we can start using our water wisely. Also in terms of resiliency and green new jobs, very few people talk about water, but we should be aiming to be 100% local water in Southern California. And we can do that by capturing storm and rain, and the difference between the two is stormwater is more at the wholesale level, rainwater is more at the residential level. Of course, recycling the water that we already have. Efficiency, I always said that the cheapest gallon of water is the one that we don't have to source. Recharging our groundwater and aquifers, gray water systems, I think it's still unconscionable. We have a building code that allows us to flush our toilets with drinking water. We should be changing that. And of course, industrial reuse. What is really getting scary is how Wall Street is now trying to hedge funds and do all kinds of nasty stuff with our own water. So we really need to push back against any privatization of this human resource, because again, we need to protect the human right to water. It's also worth mentioning at the beginning of the year, we had over $1 billion in water debt alone. This is in addition to rent, and this is in addition to energy. We are burdened in terms of water debt, and this debt has gone up since then, of course. So we need to make sure that people still have access to water, and any water debt is forgiven, and is forgiven without taxing them, because there was word in DC that if people got relief, that relief needs to be taxed. And I think we should repeal that. And again, desalinated water is the most expensive and energy intensive way to get water. And we don't say that. We actually have two studies, one from MODOC, the Metropolitan Water District of Orange County. And also we have a study from UCLA that says so. And more than anything, we also now have IPCC basically calling this maladaptation. It contributes more to climate change than it helps basically handle the situation in terms of drought. So we don't need to make matters worse. This Poseidon plan, they keep claiming that this is going to be carbon neutral. And they do that by doing all kinds of tricks with the market. And that means buying biofuels out of the state, and even forestry credits in Ecuador. We also have the problem that is, again, like I said, very energy intensive. And it's it basically consumes the same amount of energy as 35,000 homes day in and day out. And while we are all asked to conserve here in Southern California, this plant could keep going, privatizing water while we have this flex alert. It kills marine life, both at the intake by sucking in all these little baby fish and other plankton. And then it kills more marine life with the outtakes, with basically dumping super concentrated brine and other chemicals into the ocean. So we basically could get dead zones in the ocean. And as I said, in terms of sustainable funding and sustainable water, we really need to be investing in recycling plants. We right now have this Hyperion plant that is undergoing renovation, and we really should be aiming to get this water into our homes as soon as possible. And I know there's a motion before City Council to do that at an expedited timeline. We also need to reduce demand and focus on conservation. And again, capturing the rain. Those are solutions that we need to be looking at. And right now, the problem with Metropolitan Water District is that it's still subsidizing big boondoggles at much higher rate that it does sustainability, and sustainability pays right away. So that's worth mentioning. Also, it takes funding to address PFAS and even lead contamination if we build boondoggles like a desalination plant. And by the way, there's also a desal plant that they want to build now, or they're considering building in El Segundo. So that's very concerning because it has the same type of issues. It's also worth noting wealthy households can afford whole house water systems. So when they're trying to decontaminate water systems, you know, whether it's PFAS or lead or something, affluent homes can do that, but not everyone can do that, especially multifamily homes in poor areas. So we really need to make sure that people have access to good quality and affordable water. This plant basically will try to replace water that we get for $770 an acre foot with water that costs almost $3,000 an acre foot. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We also have proof that after a plant was built in Carlsbad, water has gone up, and people are less likely to afford that water. And then it's really concerning that this plant is not as climate resilient as many would say, because they had to shut down for weeks last year due to red tides. And we know that with a warmer weather and climate, we will get more red tides. There was also an alert put out because of the Huntington Beach oil spill that we had. It didn't reach Carlsbad the way some have predicted, but if it had, that plant would have shut down. And we do have a lot of offshore wells, both in Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, and in Long Beach that could affect a plant in Huntington Beach. And if desalination was such a good idea, why would Pasay need 7 lobbying firms or more to basically convince us all that this is a good thing? But in contrast, low-income families are unable to hire even half a lobbyist to push back and protect their human right to water. Naturally, as a good corporation, they want to build this thing with someone else's money. That means our money, because it's public money. And the one in Carlsbad was built with that. And they wanted to build the one in Huntington Beach also with public money. $400 million subsidy from a Metropolitan Water District, which hasn't been approved, and we hope that they don't approve it. They also want to use $1.1 billion that should go to affordable housing from CDLAC. And the problem with that is that we also get a subsidy from the federal government to the tune of 80 cents on the dollar for every affordable housing unit that we build. So while Pasay can take $1.1 billion, we could stand to lose over $2 billion to build affordable housing. And when we're having this super crisis in California about housing affordability. So we really need to stop this. So in conclusion, we really don't need desalination. It should really be the last resort. We need to prioritize efficiency and not invest in something that is so risky and expensive. And with that, I do want to have a few calls to actions for anyone who is interested in helping us defeat these. We're going to go before the Coastal Commission, either February or March of next year, but we need to start speaking now. Right now, the Coastal Commission exempted desalination plants from the critical infrastructure policy, and it needs to be part of that because we need to regulate this industry more and not less. We also need to speak a Metropolitan Water District to ensure that they don't get subsidies. Include always sustainable jobs for the Green New Deal when it comes to water. Again, speak about housing funds going to these things versus housing that we desperately need. So we need people to speak at CLAC, and there's a meeting coming up on Wednesday at 11 a.m. And speak before the State Lands Commission about the greenhouse gas emissions. They were asked, Poseidon was asked not to basically rely on all these market-based mechanisms to offset the emissions that they have because it will be running on fossil fuels. But they doubled down in their application before the Coastal Commission has all these renewable energy credits that basically poison more people where they live. And with that, I want to thank you all for letting me share this presentation, and I can take any questions now or later.
I think we'll do the questions because you will be joining us by phone anyway, so you'll be there. I think let's wait for the questions till after we do the panel discussion, and then we can get them all directed. Is that okay? Okay, so thank you so much, Andrea. That was really interesting. I want to make a comment, however, that I found really interesting. I have a house that has like a quarter bathroom, just a toilet, not even a sink in it. And I installed this wonderful little apparatus on top of the tank that after you go to the bathroom, this is like a little sink. You wash your hands, in the sink on top of the toilet. And that's what you're flushing the toilet with, the gray water from washing your hands. So, I mean, that's just a little, I believe it was originally a Japanese product, but there's this man from Stanford whose kids said, what are you going to do to help with climate, Dad? And he came out with this invention or this modification of it, and it works well. So that's a little step in the right direction, I think. Connie, do you want to come in and introduce Connor? And this is Connie Thomas. Connie is, as I said before, she is on our board and a member of the State and National Environmental Committee.
Thank you, Cara. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our Climate Forum on Water. Our moderator for today's forum is Connor Everett. And Connor is on the board with the California Water Impact Network. In addition to his duties as a facilitator for the caucus, Connor is the executive director of the Southern California Watershed Alliance and co-chair of the DeSalle Response Group. He is chair of Public Officials for Water and Environmental Refund, as well as other organizations. Connor was elected to the Casitas Municipal Water District and was president of the Ojai Basin Management Groundwater Agency. Connor was convener of the California Urban Water Conservation Council and on the state task forces on total maximum daily loads, desalinization, and the SWRCB recycled water stakeholder process.
Oh, Jesus.
Most recent, he is on the Department of Public Health Direct Potable Reuse Advisory Group, but his most important work is as elder advisor to the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water and with the Southern California Steelhead Coalition, helping remove dams on the streams where he caught fish as a youth. And hopefully others can follow in his footsteps in the future and be able to catch fish. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our moderator, Connor Everett.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize you were going to read my whole background, but what it means is that I'm very old and I've been doing water work for a long, long time. So I appreciate this opportunity for you to hear from other experts. It's really nice to open with a Rachel Carson quote and to say nothing of the Handel's music, water music. That's a very nice touch. So I'm going to give some very quick background and context and then let the other speakers speak. And we want to make sure that there's time for questions and dialogue at the end. You know, I don't think that there's any lack of irony. We're meeting in one of the hottest days I can ever remember in November. It's 87 degrees in Santa Monica where I sit now. You know, we are expecting these extremes of heat with climate change. So while people may talk about drought, I want you to consider that drought, as the LA Times editorial said, has an end. And there is no end to these extreme climate change we're seeing. Our water sources are impacted. The Colorado River has been in about 21 out of 23 years. It's been dry. You've heard about the record low levels on the dams since they were first built in the 30s. There will be cutbacks coming in the future, and we finally decided to stop saying that there was a surplus of water, but there's actually a shortage. If you're in Los Angeles, a percentage of your water has come from the Owens River and the LA Aqueduct. That too has been dry as snowpack has lessened. And the water that you see as you drive north on the 5, the State Water Project, the California Aqueduct, the allocations were down to 5% this year and a potential for 0%. At the same time, a few weeks ago, we had an atmospheric river, as they call it, a huge downpour. In the Bay Area, they got on Mount Tamalpais in Marin County, just north of San Francisco, got up to 17 inches. In inland areas, the Oroville Lake, which you might have heard, the giant reservoir that had some problems with their spillway when it filled before, actually rose 20 feet. So, you know, we go from these extremes, we fill our reservoirs, and then we seem to drain them down. So we should really think about an ongoing policy where we plan for the driest day plus fire, and a huge impact on our water supply. And the forest that burnt during the last summer, early in the fire season, will impact on where we get our water. So all of that makes it sound like we're in an apocalyptic situation, but in reality, I give credit to water agencies that we're going to hear from LADWP and Nancy Sutley and her long history in water, and Scott Houston from West Basin, who have provided water throughout these times, have expanded. And West Basin was really a leader in doing what's called recycled water, or actually taking wastewater and treating it to the point it can be used for various sources. Someday we'll get to the point, this is a little more controversial, but that it's cleaner than what comes out of your tap. And we're moving towards that. LA has big plans to take Hyperion, which historically used to dump treated wastewater in the Santa Monica Bay, and recycle 100% of that by 2035. So we have conservation programs, we have incentives. We will not have with us today the chair of the Metropolitan Water District, Gloria Gray, who also sits on the West Basin board, but the incentives have just been risen with, and the opportunities to make changes in landscaping, as was mentioned. There are innovations as simple, but as practical as creating your own gray water. Toto company in Japan that have supplied many of the millions, literally, of toilets we've exchanged for the old ones, often done with community-based organizations, are an effective way. But it's a good time. If you haven't yet, you can actually get paid per square foot to take out your lawn. You can now legally use your gray water, which is everything but your kitchen and black water from the toilet, and reuse that for irrigation under guidelines. We are seeing greater efficiency and ability to capture rainwater. I don't think Andrea showed the pictures, but she actually has a series of not just rain barrels, but cisterns to capture water off her roof. Because when it rains, it pours. And in between, we seem to have these longer, drier, and now hotter times. So with all of that as a little bit of context, I wanted to turn it over to the next speaker. And I want to make sure you all have an opportunity to ask questions, because you've got an excellent lineup today.
Okay, thank you very much, Connor. So our next speaker will be friend, club member, and a director of, as Connor said, the West Basin Municipal Water District. Scott Houston is treasurer this year of West Basin, and he's also the Water Policy and Legislation Committee chair, Public Information Education Committee member. Scott represents a lot of our club's area. You know, we have Marina Del Rey and Culver City. We have lots of members in these areas, and of course Malibu and Ladera and all parts of the city. He'll explain it to you, but it's really nice to have you representing our members as well, Scott. So let's take it from there.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Cara, and thank you to the club for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I see a lot of familiar names and faces, and I'm looking forward to the day we are all back together in person. So again, hope you're all doing good as we've gotten through this pandemic thus far. Just real quick, I think actually a lot of the things that I've said are excellent points, and I had a few of those in my notes too. We talk about water and resiliency and the future. So real briefly, the West Basin Municipal Water District, we are a public agency. We encompass about 17 cities, almost 1 million residents, mostly the South Bay cities like the beach cities and Carson and Inglewood, but also some of the independent cities on the west side are part of West Basin. So yes, Culver City, West Hollywood, Malibu, Topanga, and El Segundo. And so I actually— Santa Monica. Yeah, no, Santa Monica does their own water, and they're an independent member of the Metropolitan Water District, as is Beverly Hills. And then of course, Los Angeles as a whole. So yeah, we represent about 17 cities, 1 million residents. There are 5 elected board members. I'm one of them. I've been on the board for about 7 years now. And the other thing I wanted to note is we are the 4th largest member of the Metropolitan Water District. So Los Angeles is the biggest, then you have San Diego County, then you have Orange County Municipal Water District of Orange County, then you have West Basin. So, definitely one of the larger water districts in the region, and have a heavy footprint at Met, if you will. One of the things, and Connor mentioned it, is that we are known for at West Basin is being a leader in recycled water. And that is where you take treated sewage water, in this case at Hyperion, and then we treat that further for different purposes in our district. So if it's outdoor irrigation, if it's groundwater replenishment, if it's industrial use, all the things that were actually mentioned, that's a part of our water portfolio. And we've been doing that for about 25 years now at this district. And we do roughly 35 to 40 million gallons a day of recycled water at our plant here in El Segundo. One of the other things about that too, by the way, it's a great example of a partnership, and it's a partnership with the City of Los Angeles over all these years. So the water we're recycling limits that discharge that goes into the ocean, as well as that water gets used again for different purposes in our jurisdiction. So it's a great example of agencies working together. One of the roles, of course, as a board member is looking at the future of long-term planning, of looking at policy development, and looking at our infrastructure. So whether it's the current infrastructure and how we maintain it and how we move things forward, but also looking at the future, what types of new infrastructure we should be looking at. And I think probably one of the things that'll come up in our discussion today is how the water community is looking differently at water as a whole now, right? There's the one water concept, and just a different way of looking at it than had been traditionally done in the past. And so that's why it's also an exciting time to be a part of the water world. When it comes to climate change, and part of our discussion today, of course, so we all know we're experiencing these drier dries and wetter wets that are happening. We do have a lack of snowpack, so we just are not able to rely on that as a source of water throughout our winters like we used to. That's why recycled water is a huge part of what we do now and what we should be pushing for the future. So continuing to recycle more water, limiting discharge, into the ocean or into our rivers and streams, not using this water once and then basically tossing it away. So that's what is tremendously important, and I'm sure we'll talk about here. Stormwater capture was mentioned. Again, new thinking, new funding. Measure W passed here in Los Angeles County to fund stormwater capture projects and how those can be implemented across our county. And then groundwater use. We have tremendous opportunities in the South Bay, in the West Basin, the Central Basin locations to better utilize our groundwater, which also means we have to recharge it. And so it's great when we can recharge the groundwater that we pull out with recycled water, which is one of the things that West Basin does. And then I just want to conclude when I think about, you know, the future and current topics of ideas and thoughts. And I think where I know I'm looking at as a policymaker and a board member is environmental justice. Obviously, that is tremendous to make sure that we have fair representation, that everyone has an opportunity to be at the table. You know, we have access to decision makers and decision-making process. All those things you all know were lacking and still are. And so that's a continuing need we've got to address. Water affordability, that was mentioned. Again, we have to maintain infrastructure. We have certain costs that we have to make sure that we're funding. And yet at the same time, we have to be cognizant of those who cannot afford the water and those who don't have that access. And yes, there was tremendous water debt that folks are carrying coming out of COVID. So water affordability, that's going to be huge for all of us going forward in water, because we want to build these projects and do these types of infrastructure items and needs. And yet we've got to make sure, how do we pay for that? Two more things, career opportunities. That's one of the things that's very near and dear to my heart. I think there are tremendous career opportunities in water. So it's not just for engineers, it's for people who come out of trade school. It's for people who are interested in operators at the treatment plants. It's for people in finance. It's for people in communications. And yes, even in legal. You know, water law is extremely complicated, and that's a niche segment of the law. So I always want to encourage people to, you know, when you're talking to your kids and your grandkids, really think about water and other utilities as great opportunities for career paths. They don't get the kind of credit they deserve. Sometimes the private sector really, they're very enticing, right? The private sector is very enticing with career opportunities, but you know, the utilities have great opportunities. They're also very stable, especially when you get those economic downturns. And last but not least, and one of the things that's also starting to really finally get attention is cybersecurity. And so one of the things that we have to understand in the water world is that, you know, we need to make sure we're addressing the vulnerabilities within our system and these different challenges that are now, you know, coming at us from, you know, if they're foreign adversaries or they're domestic terrorists, but there are people who definitely want to impede the flow of our water and our infrastructure, and there are new ways to do that. And so we really have to be on guard on that. And I think that's something that the water community, we have to address head on. And so with that, I want to thank you guys again for having me. I'm looking forward to a good discussion. And I also, you know, really enjoy having my colleagues here too, because we all know each other, and it's a very exciting time to be in this space, talking about water for the future.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Scott. And now we'll hear from Nancy Sutley. Nancy, who I understand has just recently been appointed once again to the Metropolitan Water District, which you were years ago under Mayor Villaraigosa. Of course, one of Nancy's big career highlights, I think that we all will agree, as when she led the White House Council on Environmental Quality for 5 years during the presidency of Barack Obama. And she was the principal environmental policy advisor to the president, which that's just really quite amazing. And she was unanimously confirmed by the Senate to this post, which is lovely. Right now, she is and has been serving as the Chief Sustainability and Economic Development Officer for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And so, Nancy, I think you're bringing so much background and expertise to our panel today, and I really appreciate it. We all appreciate you. So do you want to just give us your thoughts here?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to join with my friends here. I think Scott said the water community, I think in Southern California, we all know each other pretty well. And I think it is sort of a testament to the sort of regional partnerships that we've all developed over the years that we can all be here together. So thank you very much. And I wanted to just, before I talk a little bit more about the drought and climate change, I wanted to just come back to a couple of issues that Andrea raised, which are very important first around water debt. She's absolutely right. It was a tremendous amount of debt that people around California built up over the pandemic, certainly before, and it just exacerbated that. But the good news is that the legislature appropriated about $1 billion for water debt relief. And so if you live in the city of Los Angeles and are an LADWP customer and you are more than 60 days behind on your water bill, help is on the way. We will be receiving funding from the state to cover those debts for a period of time between March of 2020 and June 2021. So we expect that to show up in people's bills. You don't have to do anything. It'll show up in your bill probably in January or maybe a little later than that. The other thing I just wanted to mention so people are aware is that starting from the start of the pandemic, Mayor Garcetti directed that we not shut anybody off for not paying their water or their electric bill. And our board recently extended that moratorium till March of 2022. So we want to give people a chance to catch up on their bills. They'll get relief from the state. There's relief available also for your power bills. So if you want to know more about that, you can look on our website, ladwp.com, and there's lots of information about that. But I appreciate Andrea raising that important issue. And I think has already been said around water and climate change. This is, California, as Californians, we're used to periodic drought, but there's no doubt that climate change is making all of that worse. And in a couple of ways. One, I think both Connor and Scott mentioned this changing in what we call the hydrological cycle. So wetter wets, drier dries. But the other aspect of climate change that's going to affect water into the future is just rising temperatures. And the primary way that water is stored in California is in the snowpack, in the Sierra Nevada, either running off to the west or to the east. And in Los Angeles, we get the runoff to the east, into the Eastern Sierra, into the Owens Valley that comes to Los Angeles. So both of those things really put a spotlight on the impacts of climate change on our water supply. And none of that news is good. So I think it does emphasize what others have been saying, that water conservation becomes more and more important every day, not just to address the drought that we are in now, or third year of a drought. The drought declaration, both by Governor Newsom as a statewide drought, and of course the city, Mayor Garcetti echoing that. So water conservation is critical to our getting through this drought and dealing with our water supply issues in the future as well. But there's good news for Angelenos. We use less water today than we did 40 years ago, even though we've added more than 1 million people to the population of the city of Los Angeles. And today, Angelenos use 40 gallons less per person per day than they did 15 years ago, even though we've got drier conditions. And that's really a result of not just water conservation programs from the Department of Water and Power or those that we participate in through the Metropolitan Water District, but really the efforts of all Angelenos to conserve water. In the city of Los Angeles, we have a water conservation ordinance, a drought ordinance that has been in effect. We never rolled back any of the drought restrictions from the last drought because we think it's important to kind of keep our foot on the gas when it comes to water conservation. So all of those restrictions that you may hear about, limits on how much you can water your lawn, not letting water run off your property, not using, not kind of hosing down the sidewalks, all of those restrictions have been in place really since about 2009. But that ordinance also has phases. And so we are looking at whether we need to kick it up to the next phase, which would further restrict outdoor watering. So just stay tuned, but we do have a lot of information about drought on our website and the kinds of water conservation measures that we will help you do, whether it's replacing your lawn. You can get up to $15,000 to replace your lawn with drought tolerant, sustainable landscapes. And we also offer a lot of different rebates and free devices that'll help people save water and save money on their water bill. And if you are interested in any of that, you can find information on our website at ladwp.com/save. So we are monitoring these water supply conditions and prepared to move on further restrictions as needed. So that, I think, and we've also ramped up our outreach efforts. So we want to make sure people understand that we are in fact in a drought and we all need to do our part to conserve water. But I think as others have talked about, we need to also focus on sort of our long-term efforts to improve water supply reliability. And the city of Los Angeles's sustainability plan, the LA's Green New Deal, really sets out this course where we will reduce our dependence on imported water. So currently, besides water that comes from the Owens Valley into Los Angeles, we also buy water through the Metropolitan Water District from both the State Water Project, so from Northern California, and also the Colorado River, which is in critical drought conditions as well. So the emphasis is really on further developing our local supplies of water. As Scott mentioned, we've had a partnership for many decades with West Basin Municipal Water District on recycled water out of Hyperion. But we also have a plan to get 100% of the treated wastewater to be recycled water out of Hyperion by 2035, called Operation Next. And a couple of folks mentioned stormwater projects and Measure W. We are in the process of putting together 100 new stormwater projects over the next 15 years with the goal of doubling the amount of stormwater that we capture. And then finally, just talk a little bit about groundwater, which we actually have in the city of Los Angeles, and we get somewhere about between 10 and 15% a year of our water supply every year from groundwater. But we've got some challenges around water quality, around a legacy of industrial pollution in the San Fernando Valley, some of it dating back as far back as World War II. And as we are continuing our efforts and ramping up our efforts to remediate that contamination, that really gives us this incredible capacity to store water in the San Fernando Basin and to be able to reuse both recycled water and capture more stormwater and put that to use. So I know there's questions and love to get into the discussion. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you. The one last thing I wanted to mention, and also something Andrea talked about, is if you are interested in learning more about what's in the water you get from LADWP, we do have a consumer confidence report that periodically looks at sort of what's in our drinking water. It's good. Our drinking water is very high quality in LA. But if you're interested in that, you can find out more about drinking water quality on our website. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Nancy. And I want to thank all our speakers. I think that gives you some background and context to where we are today and a little bit of where we're going to in the future. I just wanted to touch base a little bit so people have a greater understanding. And you started, Nancy, with some of the what we still call conservation programs and the incentives that are available. The Metropolitan Water District, and congratulations. I was going to say condolences, but you don't need that for being on the Metropolitan Water Board again, Nancy, but it's kind of an exciting time. So if people understand the context, and I would give one of my mentors, Dorothy Green, who was kind of the matriarch of environmental programs in Los Angeles, helped start Heal the Bay, Power, the group that I did where we did water policy conferences for 21 years in Los Angeles. A group called CWIN, which is actually a bunch of old silver-haired gorillas suing various agencies for environmental water policy, but coming up with solutions as well. And what is now called the Council for Environmental Health, that started out with
Connor, you're on mute.
You're muted.
all this time, and I hit it twice. All right, let me try again. All right. I wanted to thank all of our speakers for giving us some background. I also wanted to say that we should look at just not what we've done in the past, but we're going in the future. And Nancy hit upon one of the questions I want to ask first is what people can do, both for themselves and their neighborhood and their communities. There's incentives that have just been ramped up at the Metropolitan Water District. And just so everyone understands, there is a master wholesaler for most, but not all of Southern California, down at Union Station, which Nancy is now back on the board of. I was gonna say congratulations and condolences, but actually it's an exciting time because there's a new general manager there who, as Adele Hagedal, who came from the LA City Sanitation Department, where he worked on both stormwater and recycled water. And and lastly, on a program called LA Streets. And his focus is on how do we bring all these programs together in what he calls One Water. So he's bringing a new vision to the Metropolitan Water District, which historically was initially just focused on bringing in imported water, both from the Colorado River in Northern California. That has changed and it's continuing to change. So that's an interesting thing. So my mentor, Dorothy Green, was a matriarch of the environmental organizations. She passed, but not before she wrote a book called Avoiding Crisis, Managing California's Water. And her comment would be is we don't have a water crisis, it's just how we manage it. And how can we do that better? So I'd like each of our speakers, if they could talk, and I know Andrea has some personal experience, so maybe we can start with her on what you can do, what your neighbors can do, and what you can do as a community to increase your efficiency. There are other places around the world a fraction produce. So Andrea, if you'd like to talk a little bit on that, and then I'd ask both Scott as a regional wholesaler at West Basin, the programs he has as well.
Thank you, Connor. So I myself have gotten both barrels and the cistern to collect water. So when it rains, you'll be amazed even how little rain can fill them up. And I use that for irrigation in my own backyard, especially for my edibles. I do have also my own low-tech cheap gray water system where I put a bucket in my shower, and while the water is warming up, I just collect that water, and again I reuse it later for irrigation as well. And I think it's worth mentioning for rainwater capture that since we're living in a seismic area, if we have an earthquake, I can also use that water to flush toilets or whatever other things that might come in handy for. It's not necessarily drinkable water, but it's still a source of water that you might need when we have an emergency. I also used the rebates a long time ago to replace my turf in my front yard, and I have more California-friendly plants. And I think it's important to say that California-friendly plants are not ugly, or they don't have to be all like succulents. I do have a variety of colorful plant, including lavender, that has this splash of color in my front yard, and it attracts a lot of pollinators, which also help with my edibles. So I think it's important that we know that, and I do think that the rebate system could be a lot better with Metropolitan Water District. And I still have not gotten a rebate for my cistern, and that was like 2 years ago. And I'm still waiting to hear back from my own council member as an inquiry. So I think we really need to be investing more in this type of resilient projects, and both at the residential level and then at the agency level and even government level, just really pushing for more sustainability, more recycling water, more things that really are going to make us better and not contribute to climate change.
Thank you, thank you, Andrea. Scott, you want to talk about some of the programs through West Basin?
Sure. Thank you. And I think Andrea hit the nail on the head. A lot of the programs that the different water districts do, because they're through Metropolitan, and then we do certain ones within our own community, and/or we add more to them. So they're probably a lot of the same types of programs, but I think the biggest thing that everybody could do is to take out your lawn, to take out your grass, and replace it with drought-tolerant landscapes. In the residential sector of California, water use accounts for about 50%. Half of the water that we're using is for this outdoor ornamental lawn. And while that's really nice and pretty and beautiful, but it takes a lot of water. A lot of people are overwatering their lawns to begin with, on top of it all, and they're not watering at the right times. But when we look at this in the last drought under Jerry Brown, and here we are again, I think it only reemphasizes one of the best ways that we can save water and do it, number one, quickly, but then number two, long-term, is replace these thirsty lawns with drought-tolerant landscapes in Southern California. I like, by the way, that it was mentioned, I see someone that said in the chat, there's also an array of nice plants. They don't all have to look a certain way. A lot of people, they think they do, or they get turned off by some of these things, but no, there is an assortment of plants you can use. And as a matter of fact, in West Basin service area, we had a grant program through the state. It was some years ago, but in all of our cities, we have drought-tolerant landscapes that we've put in. And that way we can showcase the different types of plants. So for example, especially more on the west side would be Bluffs Park up in Malibu, right there off of PCH. You can see a drought-tolerant landscape, and there's got swales and all that showcases some different types of plants and vegetation. It's maintained by West Basin, the city. Down at Robert Frost Auditorium, right next to the auditorium, there's one that we put in Culver City a few years ago. The median on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood, as you go from Beverly Hills into West Hollywood, there's a great median that showcases what we all should probably be doing on our curbs. So anyway, that was a fun one, by the way, because we did that during the last drought, and as you know, Beverly Hills had their way of kind of looking at things versus some of the other cities, including West Hollywood, and so I was really happy to get that accomplished. But back to this, I think biggest picture is right now, take out grass, it's long-term, and we're paying, $2 or $3 a square foot or even more, depending on certain other programs. There's a lot of incentive right now to take advantage of that. Rain barrels, still a great opportunity on your own property to save water, use it for something else. West Basin, we provide free rain barrels every winter season to our residents. It's one of our most popular programs. It's also really good on the outreach side. because people showcase them, people talk about them, and you know, they take pictures, and people love their rain barrels. And so we love to work with our residents to showcase that. Efficient water devices, you know, that was one of the things that everybody was focused on, obviously, years ago, replacing toilets, you know, replacing shower heads. A lot of that is now the law. A lot of that technology is just what you're going to get, you know, if you're renovating a home or building new construction. So that's come a long way. But mind you, we do know there are a number of course, old toilets throughout the region in ways that we're trying to incentivize people to replace those. So that's really, really important. Also on multi-unit buildings. So if it's you know, if it's apartment buildings, especially, you know, trying to incentivize, in this case, the landlord to take those things out and put in more efficient ones. And lastly, and I want to bring this back to, I like, because gray water has been mentioned a few times. So depending on where you live and what the ordinance are in jurisdiction, but yes, gray water is a great option for folks. Of course, you need to put the system in properly, but again, you can reuse the water from your shower and from your, you know, from the dishes for purposes on your property. And again, that helps you, you know, just kind of use less water and be more secure in what you're doing to do your part. So, but all these different programs, you know, you could look at the Be Water Wise website. I think Andrea put in the chat, LADWP, you go to westbasin.org. A lot of these we do similarly, and or we'll send you to almost the same place sometimes. But right now is the time we're trying to re-wake up the public and get them back on board with us, because you know, people did slack off after the last drought, and here we are again. So you know, this is why we got to keep having these conversations and keep pushing information out. And we need our public to help us do that.
And Nancy, did you have anything else you wanted to add with LADWP incentives or programs?
Yeah, I think Scott covered a lot of what I was going to say about, I mean, the importance of outdoor water use. As he said, a lot of the fixtures in our homes are way more efficient than they were before. If you live in Los Angeles, maybe, and it's probably 2 years ago now, we came and dropped off a couple of aerators and shower heads for every one of our customers. And of course, Scott said that's all you can buy now are the efficient fixtures. But really the outdoor watering. And I just wanted to make sure folks who live in the city of Los Angeles know that if your outdoor watering right now is limited to 3 days a week, 8 minutes a station, and no outdoor watering between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And so that's what's currently in place. It's been in place since about 2009. And we do have the option to go to 2 days a week. So really be conscious of your outdoor water use. And as everyone said, there really is the opportunity to replace turf with California-friendly and drought-tolerant landscaping. And if you want to see, if you're downtown and want to see some examples, if you come to the DWP building, we have 2 demonstration gardens out front. They're really quite beautiful. And low water use. So thanks.
Thank you very much. I did see that someone had asked in the chat about artificial turf, or what's been called AstroTurf. It's been I've seen it here in Santa Monica used in school fields, but it's also created a series of issues. Essentially, it's recycled plastic, sometimes shoes, sometimes tires. There is a problem with the water that infiltrates through it and the quality of that. So the city of Los Angeles is not recommending it for rebates. It also, I've heard from parents that it gets very hot and they actually have to water the turf, which that makes it slippery and it can pick up bacteria as well. So I guess people can sometimes use it in parkways, that little space between the sidewalk and the street, but it isn't long term. I also know that it's a huge cost to the city of Santa Monica to then replace it after about 5 years and tear it out. So that's not considered a solution. There's so many better solutions that are alive, and as pollinators, butterflies and others, bees can benefit from and are really quite beautiful. I went out to the Theodore Payne Native Plant Society out in Sunland. I hadn't been there for a long time. They have a wonderful display of plants broken down by types, including a huge selection of sage plants, succulents, and others. I just happened to do a memorial for my mother on the beach, and we gave everyone a coastal daisy that I had got from Theodore Payne to take home. And everyone was quite happy to get something that in these days that will survive and grow well in these conditions. You have to water them initially to get them established, and then they don't want to be watered too much. So they're really made for this climate that we have of typically going long periods of time without any rain at all. And then what we're seeing more and more with climate change is a big deluge and then not much at all. And it varies from all the places where our water comes from. But we keep saying everything's unprecedented. That word, it's losing meaning because it's happening all the time.
What word was that?
Unprecedented.
Ah, okay. Yeah, right.
There's
a question, Connor. There's a couple questions in the chat. Molly has a question.
All right.
Molly?
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think I wanted to ask Nancy in regard to the restrictions. Since 2009, how do they make sure that these restrictions are, how do you penalize someone from, because I see people all around in Mid-City over here by the Grove, like just hosing sidewalks, hosing their containers, their trash containers. It's like people don't know. So that's one question. And why aren't our public leaders, like our city council people, our mayor, out there constantly talking about this? So the people that they're leading have this information. I can never figure out why we aren't unifying it in a bigger way. So districts know always about this. People are having town halls and giving instruction of what we can do, because I didn't know the restrictions were still in play. And how do you, what's the word I'm trying to enforce those?
Yeah, thanks for the question. First of all, on the outreach, I think you will see a lot of that ramping up in the city of LA. We've restarted some of our and amplifying some of our outreach programs. So we had a character called The Drop, who was out a lot in the last drought, and he's back, and he's got his friend, The Plug, so to remind people to save energy as well. Unfortunately, part of it is that, it's hard to keep the message up when people don't feel the drought. They kind of start to tune out. So you will see that outreach ramping up, really starting a few weeks ago, and we'll continue to do that. We have a what we call water conservation unit, folks who are our employees who are driving around. You'll see them in wrapped cars. And really we start with trying to educate folks about what the restrictions are, because people have a lot of things on their mind these days, and just trying to remind them about the importance of water conservation. You can also let us know if you see people doing things that, like hosing down the sidewalk. But we will always start with education. There is the opportunity to find people if they continue to do these things, but we would, rather start with the education and just reminding people about, what these restrictions are and why they're important. So
you don't enforce them. You just give restrictions, but there's no way to enforce them.
No, there are penalties.
Like a parking ticket. Why not give parking tickets?
We have done that and may do that again. But usually we start with like a lot of things, with a fix-it ticket, because we don't want the money. We want to change the behavior. And we do find, and this is based on our own experience, and I think research, is that when people understand how their water use is connected to the drought and the situation, that people do change their behavior. So that's why this outreach and education is the most important thing that we can do in terms of trying to enforce those restrictions. But
Right.
we do have penalties if we need them, and we do reach out, for example, to some of our largest residential water users. We are in contact with them usually yearly to remind them about the need to conserve water, because we know in LA there are some homes which have very large lawns, and sometimes people aren't, they're not the ones paying the bill, their accountant or somebody is paying the bill, and they don't really see it until we kind of nudge them a little bit, right, and remind them. The other thing I would just mention in terms of things that people can do is, if you see a big spike in your water bill, you may have a leak. And it's really important if you notice that, and we will also contact you if we see big changes in your water bill, that you may have a leak, either in your premise, so a leaking toilet, or in your outdoor irrigation. So it's very important to try to pay attention to that and really address those leaks. It'll save you money, and it'll save water for everyone. So thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Good point. And a lot of leaks are silent, like the toilet leaks. You actually can put dye in your top part of your tank and see if it comes through, because you may not be knowing that's happening, and the constant flow of water out is actually running and adding up. Even as little drips from faucets, we calculate, and they add up over time. And some outdoor leaks will go down and not up to the surface. You may not be aware of them as well. Leaks equal an estimated 8 to 10% statewide of the system losses that we have. And a new UC Davis report is looking at it being as much as 17%. So, I was quite happy in Santa Monica when they replaced my main down the middle of the street. It was disruptive. The street was closed. There was a lot of noise, but it's worth it. We need to do that kind of investment. I know the city of LA has a long-term project to do that, but we certainly hear when there's major leaks that happen, but that's an excellent investment that needs to be done, and with it, there's energy. Did you have another comment you wanted to make, Molly?
No, thank you. I was just gonna say the reason we're having this forum is to educate and to inspire people to change, but thank you, yeah. So we need more of our clubs doing that also, talking about ways we can help to, with the climate emergency, with our water, with everything. So thank you.
You're now in water issues, and if we step up the levels or the phases of conservation that are required by a drought, we'll be hearing a lot about it. I would like to say also that environmental organizations work with agencies and also do their own programs. For instance, Gila Bay has a Know Your Flow and their speakers bureau, and they go out to schools constantly. They're looking for people that want the training and then are available to go out and talk to business groups and especially schools as well.
Yeah, speaking of schools, there was a question, and how is conservation being addressed in the schools? Anybody?
Yeah, well, we've had a partnership for many years with LAUSD on education around both energy and water. So we have programs with LAUSD as well. We also work with a number, as Connor mentioned, a number of community-based organizations. So we fund a number of community-based organizations to do education on water conservation in the schools and outside of the schools. So we have a number of programs there. We've also worked very closely with LAUSD. We provide funding for them to do water conservation upgrades in schools. So we've had a program with them probably for the last about 12 years, basically providing incentives or subsidizing the upgrade of their infrastructure inside the schools to conserve water and conserve energy. So, but the education part of that, particularly with our young people, is so important. Thanks.
Molly?
Wait, Ingrid, we can hear you. Please mute yourself.
Please.
No, that was Connie.
Oh.
And this is,
did you call me?
Oh, God.
This is Scott. I'll just tag on real fast to what Nancy said. So in the West Basin Municipal Water District, we actually do work in partnership with all the independent school districts that we serve. So if it's Culver City Unified, if it's Malibu Topanga, because the Malibu portion, if it is parts of the LAUSD area, let's say it's El Segundo or Manhattan Beach, you know, all the different school districts, West Basin, we work with them on a number of things, but one of the great things is, aside from the COVID situation, is normally what we do is we offer free field trips throughout the year to classes to come down and see our water recycling plant in El Segundo. So they can come down and they get to tour it and they get to learn and they get to drink the water that we're producing there. That's actually probably one of our best programs. I think we usually do somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000 students per year on a normal basis. And by the way, we did adapt well in this pandemic to do everything hybrid and go into the classroom and work with those teachers so that they had some activities and other ways to engage with us. And then of course, working with Metropolitan, we've got, you know, the Solar Cup competition. So we work with different, you know, teams at some of the schools, and they want to do, it's almost like robotics, but basically where you're looking at building a solar powered, you know, watercraft that they take out onto one of the lakes later with the high school kids. That's a great program. And the Water is Life art contest. So all these, we reach out again to all these different teachers and across our service area, as well as all the other metropolitan member agencies do. And ultimately they win locally through our board, but then they get elevated to metropolitan. And if they're, you know, if they're good and they're lucky, they end up being in a calendar, which is super cool. So I think it's very, very important. That question was brought up, is how do we work with schools? How do we work with the younger generations? Because a big part of this too is they're the ones that really get it, and then they bring it back home to mom and dad, to, you know, grandma and grandpa, and so on and so forth. But it's also extremely, you know, it's really, really fun. It's very rewarding for our staff and for, you know, the everybody involved, including the elected officials and the parents. So again, I think these are really great programs and things that we have to continue stepping up on.
Okay, good. I see that Julie Goodman has a question. Julie, you want to unmute yourself? Julie, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Good.
Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I live in Santa Monica. My HOA, we have 2 buildings and a landscape courtyard. We've taken advantage of a couple of the city incentives to get rid of our front lawn and to do something with runoff. I don't remember exactly what. And the next investment that you talked of ways of saving water, the next investment that we are discussing is drip irrigation, and whether or not it's worth it to do it. We have 16 units, 2 buildings. You know, we don't have a huge property. The idea really appeals to me because I had a tour of drip irrigation 30 years ago in the Coachella Valley and fell in love with the idea. And I wondered if you have an opinion to help guide us in this decision. Thank you.
So West Basin doesn't serve, nor does LADWP Santa Monica. However, I live and at work and sometimes try to advise the city water department. Certainly drip irrigation, both in reducing your output, making it more efficient for your plants themselves, and reducing the amount of water. And actually, if you maintain it correctly, reducing the potential for leaks is a good investment. And a lot of the programs, when you replace the turf, require an upgrade in your irrigation and switching to drip as well. I would want to say that Santa Monica has a program that they are trying to reach independence of imported water, that what they call their self-sufficiency program.
Right.
We've found that away. It's a good investment. They're now trying to offset the potential for the state requirements for more housing. But I would say that if we continue to improve our efficiencies to the level that places like Israel, Spain, and Australia have, we could even accommodate more people, as the city of LA has, where their water demand was flat and has now continued to be down over time. So I think Santa Monica is having kind of a robust discussion, like other areas, is how do we step it up to the next level? And how do we not just rely on residents, to make these changes, but also commercial, industrial, and institutional buildings and businesses within the area that can use a lot of water as well. And I think we're seeing.
You know what? We only have a few minutes left, and we have 4 more questions.
Go ahead, Kara.
That I think maybe we can address these 4 questions.
So that was a thumbs up on drip irrigation, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, they said, yeah. I thought. Anyway, we have Murtaza, and then Michelle, and then Ellen.
Hi, thank you for this excellent presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I just I missed part of the beginning of the presentation, so hopefully I'm not asking something that was asked before, but it's related to what was mentioned, is a question of how much can we, with recycling water, reuse our own water? What percentage will we still need to be dependent on importing water? And how is it also related to, if there's an earthquake on the aqueduct, how long would we be sustainable locally?
Who would like to address that?
I can start. I mean, we, first we got to get to sort of figuring out exactly how we can recycle all this water. So there's still some discussions about the actual sort of regulations around whether what's called indirect potable reuse, where it goes into the groundwater and sits there for a while to do some additional kind of treatment, natural treatment, or direct potable reuse. So, but LA, we mentioned Operation Next. We take 100% of the treated wastewater coming out of our Hyperion plant just south of LAX. And working with some of our regional partners, both West Basin and MWD, looking at real opportunities for building a robust regional recycling program. So exactly how much of that will offset, it really depends on the water year. And but really the City of LA's strategy going forward is really around developing these local supplies of water, primarily recycling and stormwater capture, and better using our existing groundwater basins because they give us a lot of flexibility. So, more to come on that, but we're very excited to be moving forward with some of these projects.
Yeah, I would really briefly add, I mean, Nancy said everything that needed to be said, but you are accurate that a couple of things. Again, we're just not getting as much water supply coming down into the system because we're not getting those snowpacks. We can't rely on that over the winter to slowly melt and supply both the reservoirs up north and more of our local ones. We do have basically a 6-month supply out at Diamond Valley Lake, which is, in the city of, I want to say Hemet, right, Nancy? I think it's Hemet out in Riverside County. Metropolitan does own that. So that's a nice big location where you store water. So in case there is a major earthquake, you are shut off from the system, that at least you can continue supplying some of the need until you get things back where they need to be. One of the things I think that was really a challenge for those of us in water is, as this drought has gotten to where it is right now, but remember, Northern California was talking about it way earlier than we were down here. And there was a real disconnect on the communication. So, Northern and Central California, they didn't have the storage options that we had and some of the resiliency. And they were hitting that really quickly. And it took a while before Southern California got to where I think we should have been earlier, but we're there now. But last but not least, this is why we're going to maximize all the types of local control issues we can do. So if you're going to recycle water, you're going to put water in storage in your groundwater basins. Those are the things that will insulate us from the ups and downs of imported water supplies coming in. We could go on and on about this, but that's what we deal with every day, right, Nancy? So it's very, very interesting and diligent what we're trying to accomplish.
Yes, we could get very wonky. We'll spare you all.
Let's have Michelle. You had one, and then Ellen, and then I think that's our program. It's great. I think this could go on, as you said, Connor. It could go on for hours as people start thinking of questions. Michelle.
Yeah, you guys are, this is really, really good, really educational. I was just going to ask, can we get a copy of Andrea's slides? I just really appreciate everything that you guys said. It was
sure we can get that,
informative.
Michelle. I'm sure we, yeah, I'll ask her. We can get that, I'm sure. Ellen, you had a question?
I can share that with you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, or ask about recycling more, which seems like a sort of a no-brainer to me. And yet what's being proposed in various places is desalination plants as opposed to more recycling plants. So first of all, is 100% of our water going through recycling now for I'm a LADWP customer? If not, how do we get to that point? Do we need to build more plants? Do we need to expand the capacity at Hyperion? What do we need to do so that we are recycling every bit of water that can be recycled and reused?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. First of all, I would just say on desalination that the city of LA has no plans to do desalination.
But Orange County and San Diego.
Yeah,
and
understood. But I would just, as a DWP customer, I want to assure you that's not in our plans. So, you know, we are working, so the way it works in the city of LA, Bureau of Sanitation and wastewater treatment plants, LADWP does all the drinking water. So we are working together. We have this one water plan for the city, really looking at maximizing recycling. So there are two wastewater treatment plants in the San Fernando Valley and kind of coming down the 5, the Donald C. Tillman plant, and then LA Glendale treatment plant on the LA River. So that's those are being upgraded to further enhance the recycled water potential coming out of those plants. And then Hyperion is the big one. There's plenty of capacity at Hyperion. It's the largest wastewater treatment plant west of Chicago. So there's plenty of capacity there. It's really making the investments to upgrade the treatment of the wastewater so that it can be fully reused. And so that's the plan that we're working on right now with the Bureau of Sanitation. And then, so right now, and Scott mentioned, we've had this partnership with West Basin for many years. And that water is put to a number of different uses. There are Purple Pipe that provides recycled water to a number of city parks and other outdoor use like Forest Lawn Cemetery, but Purple Pipe it's kind of expensive to expand that Purple Pipe network because they're basically building another kind of parallel water distribution system. So I think we are focusing more on making sure that we are maximizing the reuse of our wastewater and getting our wastewater treatment plants upgraded. Most of the, I would say a question about golf courses. Most of the golf courses in LA now, I think the last time I looked, maybe Connor, you know, it was at least 85% of the golf courses in the city of LA were able to had access to recycled water and were using it. It may have gone up some. But we are trying to get most of them, if not all of them, onto recycled water. So thanks for the question.
So I think that's it for the questions. This has been great. Thank you all, Connor, Nancy, Andrea on the phone, and Scott. I'm really, really happy that you came. I hope that you found it also enjoyable, and I think we got a lot out of it. I wanted to remind everyone that this is actually the first of our 4 Elements Forum series. We're really excited about this. Thank you, Molly, for proposing this. And our next will be fire. And as Connor pointed out, I think that, fire and water are so connected. It's crazy, you know, and then when we look at it, you know, it really is a circle with all of our elements, with our bodies, with everything. We're all connected. And so thank you so much. And I guess we'll exit out with Handel's water music.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much,
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Water is life.
Yes. Rad, music. Here we go.
Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.